We live in the age of pasteurization, vacuum seals, antibacterial control. The modern world is trying to make food safe to the point of tastelessness. We fear bacteria. We despise mold. We build barriers between ourselves and biological chaos. But in the very heart of the Mediterranean, on the rocky shores of Sardinia, there exists an artifact that openly mocks these fears: Casu Marzu. This is not just cheese. It is a biological rebellion, a product that gained worldwide notoriety after being mentioned in the Guinness Book of Records. A product later banned for sale in the European Union. But for the people of Sardinia, it was never a scandal. It remains a symbol of connection to the land. Proof that life can emerge precisely where civilization sees only decay. This is food that doesn't just smell. It acts. The earliest references to cheeses like this on Sardinia go back at least to the 19th century, a time when the absence of salt and the absence of refrigeration turned risk into a survival strategy. Casu Marzu begins as an ordinary sheep's milk cheese, pecorino, but its fate changes at the moment of what locals consider a sacred desecration. The cheese wheel is deliberately left open under the scorching sun, allowing the cheese fly Pyophila casei to perform its act of invasion. It lays hundreds of eggs. What follows is a triumph of enzymes. The hatched larvae begin to consume the cheese from the inside. Passing through their digestive systems, the fats are broken down, transforming a solid mass into a soft, oozing cream known as the tears of the cheese. The wheel becomes hollowed out, a living cathedral of absence. Thousands of larvae, each about 8 millimeters long, work without pause, dissolving structure into organized chaos. And then comes the final effect. When disturbed, a single larva can jump up to 15 centimeters into the air. This is not a metaphor. When you eat Casu Marzu, the food quite literally resists you, launching itself toward your eyes in a last instinctive attempt to defend its territory. From the perspective of sanitary law, Casu Marzu is classified as a biological hazard. In the language of modern hygiene, it looks like an infectious projectile. The primary risk lies in a simple fact. The larvae can survive the hydrochloric acid of the human stomach. They are capable of anchoring themselves to the intestinal walls, causing microperforations, vomiting, and extreme pain. Such cases are described in medical journals as rare. But the impossibility of fully excluding them became the legal foundation for the ban. This is culinary Russian roulette. And here lies the paradox. If the larvae in the cheese are dead, the product is considered toxic and unfit for consumption, even by the harsh standards of Sardinia. Casu Marzu can only be eaten when it is teeming with life. For the Sardinians, the movement of the larvae is not a threat. It is an indicator, a signal that the cheese has reached the correct stage of maturity. Dead larvae mean toxicity, final decay, a state that is unacceptable even by local tradition. The bans gave birth to an underground industry. Casu Marzu cannot be found on supermarket shelves. It is not served in restaurants for tourists. This is a product for insiders only, sealed by trust between shepherd and buyer. For centuries, Sardinians have used it as an aphrodisiac and as folk medicine. They believe that a cheese which has passed through the stage of ultimate decay grants access to the raw strength of nature itself. For them, the fight for Casu Marzu is not about food safety. It is the geopolitics of identity. By refusing to submit to the standards of Brussels, they defend their right to risk, their right to a history that smells of ammonia and the sharp bitterness of reborn protein. The taste of Casu Marzu is often described as a burning fire in the mouth, a concentrated explosion of umami, tannins, and sharpness that scorches the receptors and leaves an aftertaste that lingers for hours. This is engineered food. You take a piece of flatbread, You close your eyes to protect them from the jumping larvae. And you taste. At first, there is a fleeting creaminess, soft, almost gentle. Then the transformation begins. The flavor shifts from dairy sweetness to an aggressive chemical burn. And in the final moment, you realize what you are actually consuming. Not a product, a process. This is not the taste of cheese. It is the taste of time itself, accelerated by thousands of tiny jaws. This is not a meal. It is an act of culinary extremism. The boundary between subject and object dissolves. You are no longer simply eating food. You are allowing into your body a process that normally belongs after life, not during it. Casu Marzu does not ask for your approval. It forces surrender to its primordial power. Anyone who has swallowed this fire can no longer look at sterile supermarket food the same way again. You have touched a forbidden mechanism of nature, and that experience permanently rewires your internal chemistry. Today, Casu Marzu exists in a strange flickering state of semi-legality. Since 1962, Italian law, and later the strict directives of the European Union, have classified it as food contaminated with parasites. This is a legal death sentence. But Sardinian shepherds, people whose ancestors have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, did not lay down their arms. They began a quiet war for the status of a traditional product. Their strategy rests on survival. First, culture. Sardinians succeeded in having Casu Marzu included in the list of prodotti agroalimentari tradizionali, an official recognition that this cheese has been produced on this land for more than 25 years using an unchanged method. It is no longer just food. It is intangible heritage, something that cannot be erased by a single signature from a sanitary inspector. Second, science. Together with the University of Sassari, producers are attempting to create a controlled environment for decay. They are trying to prove that if the fly and the larvae are bred in sterile laboratory conditions, the risk of infection drops to zero. This is an attempt to digitize chaos, to force the larva to operate under a safety protocol. And finally, silence. The authorities of Sardinia largely look the other way when it comes to the cheese's black market. Fines can reach tens of thousands of euros. But over the decades, prisons have not filled with shepherds. This is a case where local identity proves stronger than global surveillance. The cheese has become a form of civil disobedience. For Sardinian shepherds, the legalization of Casu Marzu is not about profit. It is about sovereignty. They believe that if bureaucracy is allowed to kill their cheese, the next step will be the erasure of their memory. In the fight for the right to eat rotten cheese lies the deeper right to remain oneself in a world that demands everyone be equally sterile. The story of Casu Marzu is not a chronicle of gastronomic madness. It is an epic about the collision of two civilizations. One believes in numbers, tests, and absolute safety. The other believes in instincts, life cycles, and the power of tradition that does not fear death. This cheese reminds us that true culture is always slightly pungent, always a little dangerous, and always pushes beyond what is permitted. Casu Marzu survives not in spite of bans, but because of them. Because nothing sharpens the taste of life more than the knowledge that behind every bite stands a centuries-old struggle, risk, and a tiny creature leaping straight into eternity. If you want to see something more in ordinary things and understand how food has shaped our world, stay with us. Until next time, see you in the next video.